May the words of my mouth
and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen.
It's now 3 weeks ago tomorrow since Robin Williams committed suicide. The first thing that popped into my head when I heard that it was a suspected suicide was the Smokey Robinson song, Tears of a Clown. It was co-written by Smokey, Stevie Wonder, and a man named Henry Cosby. I'm just going to paraphrase some of the lyrics because the song is sung so fast by Smokey, you may not know all the words. Anyone who knows me, though, knows that I know most of the words to the 50s and 60s song. If there's a smile on my face, it's only there trying to fool the public. But when it comes down to fooling you, that's quite a different subject. Don't let my glad expression give you the wrong impression. Really, I'm sad, sadder than sad. I'm hurting so bad. Like a clown, I pretend to be glad. Now, there's some sad things known to man, but ain't too much sadder, poor grammar Smokey, than the tears of a clown when there's no one around. Now, if I appear to be carefree, it's only there to camouflage my sadness. In order to shield my pride, I try to cover this hurt with a show of gladness. Don't let my show convince you that I've been happy since you decided to go. Oh, I need you so. I replaced the word with God, I need you so. I'm hurt and I want you to know. But for others, I put on a show. Just like Pagliacci did, I try to keep my sadness hid, smiling in the public eye, but in my lonely room I cry the tears of a clown when there's no one around. It's fairly well known that Robin Williams battled depression and drug and alcohol addiction at various points throughout his career. A man who could make the world laugh had some very serious internal struggles and battles. Many of us cannot understand how someone who seemed to have everything, wealth, fame, and apparent happiness, could struggle with depression. But depression and other mental illnesses, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and the like, equally affect rich or poor, celebrity or regular people, like us, young or old. It can affect anyone. And it's important to realize that the person that we least suspect is the one who might be struggling the most. That is one of the reasons why I am so open about my own mental health. Let's face it, I'm open about pretty much everything in my life, sometimes to the shock and dismay of others. Many of you may already know about my misdiagnosis 11 years ago, which made my first neurologist decide to put me on large doses of prednisone per day. So what happened? Steroid-induced psychosis, 15 days in the psychiatric ward at Hackensack Medical Center, 6 weeks as an outpatient. I was paranoid, depressed, couldn't get out of bed in the morning. I was agoraphobic, so I couldn't leave my house. I had suicidal ideations. I couldn't read, write, or listen to music. And the psychiatric ward medications made it worse. I walked like a zombie, my knees were shaking. The worst is that I thought I had killed or harmed my children. And at the time, they were 12, 9, and 4. It was absolutely horrific. Everyone in the psychiatric ward, I was convinced, was an undercover cop. I did not want to eat my food because I thought I was being poisoned. The medications there made me start hallucinating. It turns out that the steroids, which I didn't need at all, caused me to have bipolar disorder. So isn't it sad that it takes the untimely death of a celebrity to get us to start talking about these things? These are conversations that need to occur. My prayer is that this increased awareness will save some lives, and I pray that we'll start to take care of each other and look out for each other a little bit more. Joanna may recall a conversation that I had with her many years ago about my favorite verse in Romans, the one that Tammy read today. I love the word boast in there, boast of my sufferings. That will build, it will cause you to persevere, it will build your character, and ultimately give you hope. I had spoken with Joanna about feeling in the pit of despair and trying to climb up and climb up and climb up and falling back down, and keep persevering, climb up. Okay, and that climbing was building character, and then finally I get out of the pit, and I'm laying there in the sun, and there was hope. That's how it felt to me. So why do I love the word boast in there? Well, it's to talk, it means to talk or write about oneself or something related to oneself in a proud or self-admiring way. So I am proud of my suffering. It made me the person that I am today, it molded my character, and I am tougher on the inside. And I have hope always for a brighter tomorrow. Medication for my own mental illness, which it took almost 2 years to find the right cocktail of medication, which is not uncommon, has allowed me to live a, quote, normal life. Many aren't so fortunate. On November 19, 2013, Virginia State Senator Craig Deed's son, Gus, attacked his father with a knife, not killing him, but leaving scars on his forehead and left cheek. After the attack, Gus, age 24, killed himself with a hunting rifle. There's a sad twist to this. Just a day earlier, Senator Deeds had taken his son to a mental health facility under an emergency custody order. The custody order only lasted 6 hours under the Virginia law. The facility, he was afraid that Gus would harm himself. The facility said they were unable to accommodate Gus because there were not enough beds. The custody order ran out, and Gus was released and killed himself. Senator Deeds successfully pushed for a new law extending the amount of time mentally ill individuals can be held in emergency custody, along with other reforms of the mental health system in Virginia. On January 25, 2014, 3 people were killed in a mall in Columbia, Maryland, including the shooter. In November 2013, a homeless man in Ocean City, Maryland, set himself on fire and then ran into St. Paul's Episcopal Church. He set fire to the office and the rectory, killing himself and the rector. We recently had an incident within the past year at the Garden State Plaza where a young man with a rifle terrorized the mall employees and mall patrons. He didn't hurt anyone, but then he ultimately did kill himself. In each of these cases, and so many, many, many more, the list is really endless. There's one common denominator: mental illness. So just let's briefly look at the mental health statistics in the United States. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, serious mental disorders that are often the cause of such terrible events are relatively uncommon. But their research also shows that 4.1% of all adults in the U.S. have been diagnosed with what they call a serious mental illness. This is defined as a diagnosable mental, behavioral, or emotional disorder, either currently or within the past year, that causes significant impairment in major life activities. And there may be many others that are not reported. 1 in 4 adults are diagnosed with a mental disorder in any given year, including anything from anxiety to depression to bipolar disorder. And of those 25%, only about 41% receive any kind of care or services for the disorder. That means that 59%, or more than half, do not seek help. Why don't they seek help? Well, according to the University of Rochester Medical Center Health Encyclopedia, they don't think treatment will help. They don't recognize the symptoms, or they can't afford it. And people also cite the social stigma attached to mental illness as a reason not to get help. The National Alliance on Mental Illness says that 1 in 17 adults in the U.S. live with a serious mental illness, schizophrenia, major depression, or bipolar disorder. The statistics are absolutely frightening, even to me, and I'm one of those who is successfully being treated. I think it's something we all need to know. It affects juveniles, it affects the homeless, and I've already given you some statistics about the numbers of Americans being affected by mental illness, but 20% of youth, ages 13 to 18, experience severe mental disorders in a given year. 26% of homeless adults staying in shelters live with serious mental illness, and an estimated 46% live with severe mental illness. Approximately 20% of state prisoners and 21% of local jail prisoners have a recent history of a mental health condition. And 70% of youth in juvenile justice systems have at least one mental health condition, and at least 20% live with a severe mental illness. What does it cost America? Serious mental illness costs America $193.2 billion in lost earnings per year. Over 50% of students with a mental health condition, age 14 and older, who are served by special education drop out, the highest dropout rate of any disability group. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the U.S., more common than homicide, and the 3rd leading cause of death for ages 15 to 24 years. More than 90% of those who die by suicide had one or more mental disorders. And sadly, although military members comprise less than 1% of the U.S. population, veterans represent 20% of suicides nationally. And each day, about 22 veterans die from suicide. The church has often struggled to maintain a balance between recognizing the natural causes of mental illness and attending to the spiritual needs of those who struggle. This was brought to the forefront when Pastor Rick Warren lost his son, Matthew, in April 2013 to suicide. He is one of the most well-known pastors in America as the author of The Purpose-Driven Life. An article in the Washington Post on April 13, 2013 described how the death of Warren's son caused some Christian leaders to question how the church might sometimes stigmatize those who struggle with mental illness. Some of the leaders quoted expressed a desire to take the struggle out of the shadows, bring them to the forefront, and discuss reasons why those struggles might have been driven into the darkness in the first place. Is it because all disease, sickness, and pain is rooted in a world broken by sin? That's what some Christians believe. That's from an evangelical blogger in the Washington Post named Rebecca Lyons. She believes that this understanding might lead people to downplay or minimize any natural causes of mental illness. Some people might be reluctant to seek medical help for mental health problems, especially if they believe issues like anxiety and depression are primarily spiritual issues. Evangelicals often believe in the power of prayer and dependence upon God and Jesus for healing, and that might stifle congregation members from talking about mental illness or seeking help for themselves or family members. So says that same article. So how can we as a church minister to those struggling with mental health issues? First, there has to be awareness. A dialogue needs to be opened within a congregation about mental illness in society and what might cause us to help bring people and their struggles out of the shadows. Second, prayer. Congregations ought to be in prayer for those suffering from mental illness and those around them in their families. Prayer can also aid the congregation in determining what ministries might be helpful or what actions need to be taken in order to respond to those people struggling with mental illness. If we as a congregation face these issues openly and honestly, with Christ-like love and compassion, we can bring healing, light, and hope to an issue that affects so many in our community and, yes, our congregation. A culture of openness and compassion needs to be built in the church. And unfortunately, there will always be stories of tragedy and violence related to these complex mental health issues. But the church is in a unique position to minister to the community when the unthinkable things rear their ugly head. We need to be a welcoming presence, be open, be available for people to come in and rest in a chaotic time. We need to provide opportunities for prayer and worship with others. That is something that only the church can do. Sometimes liturgy and ritual are the only things that offer a sense of normalcy in a situation that is utterly abnormal. And when there are no words for a situation, sometimes prayers like the Lord's Prayer offer some normalcy. And lastly, we have to be actively involved in promoting reconciliation when it's needed. And we are then providing a precious gift to the community. Back in October 2006, members of an Amish community that suffered the tragic loss of 5 young schoolgirls in a schoolhouse gave an unbelievable testimony to the world by attending the funeral of their killer. There were 75 people at the funeral. Half of them were Amish. Wow, how can our congregation be witness for love and forgiveness? That is the question that I leave you with. Then I just wanted to share some quotes with you from Robin Williams. Mike said I should end on a positive note. This was not a positive sermon. Well, I'll say, why do they call it rush hour when nothing moves? But there were 2 that really, they weren't funny, but I'm going to say them anyway. Robin Williams said, you treat a disease, you win, you lose. You treat a person, I guarantee you, you'll win no matter what the outcome. He also said this, the human spirit is more powerful than any drug, and that is what needs to be nourished with work, play, friendship, and family. These are the things that matter. Amen.
Amen.
Can we turn to page